We asked our Instagram followers who is the best mono red commander, and we can now tell you the top 10 best mono red commanders in MTG 2023 update. Just making it into the list we have Zezoff, Chaos Rider. Originally printed in 2020's Jumpstart, the Red Devil says whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, you create a 1/1 Devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever one or more devils you control attack one or more players, you and those players each draw a card, then discard a card at random. The first route Zezoff decks go is all out devils. Throw in devils here, throw in devils there, make sure we have devils everywhere.
I'm a poet and didn't even know I was rhyming those words.
Not only are there over 50 devil cards in Magic, there are a dozen devil creating creature cards too. We also don't mind seeing those devils perish, so having ways to sack them doesn't hurt too. Lastly, we're drawing and discarding plenty with Zezoff, so another popular strat is leaning into wheels. Make our opponents and ourselves draw all the cards and have plenty of synergy to gain when we are drawing through our deck. A phrase I say plenty, this is one that really does fit the bill of devilishly disgusting. Before we get on to number 9, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for all things MTG. Subscribing is completely free to do, and it helps our channel grow and grow as we head towards 5,000 subscribers. Another way to help support the channel is to sign up to Card Market and use our referral code gathering-the-magic when signing up. Shout out to Yonder Burr for using our code. Yeah, love to see it. Moving on to number 9, we have Etali, Primal Storm. Originally printed in 2018's Rivals of Ixalan, whenever Etali attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana costs. The most common route with Etali is via those extra combat phases. Whilst blue is extra heavy in turns, red is more than heavy in extra combat phases. The more phases we have, the more Etali triggers we have, and the more cards we can steal thanks to Etali. Another less common but still fairly popular route is to go Dino heavy. With over 140 Dino cards in MTG, and around a quarter of them being red, your prehistoric pals can go super synergistic and even perhaps help Etali hit the field earlier. Lastly, when Etali comes out, you will quickly become arch enemy at the table, so all that usual protection to help keep your dastardly Dino on the field is key. Next on that list we have Perforas, God of the Forge. First printed in 2013's Theros set, the indestructible god says as long as your devotion to red is less than 5, it's not a creature. Whenever another creature ATBs under your control, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. And you can pay to give your creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. These Perforas decks go all out tokens. The more tokens we can get onto the field, the more times we're triggering our commander, and the more times he's doing that 2 damage to all of our opponents. These can be tokens of any kind, but with red we know people mainly love making that little army of goblins. We can throw in cards like Impact Tremors that cause even more damage when creatures are hitting the field, and go extra evil, throwing in every red double or triple damager. That aggro red will look even more of a threat if you're hitting each opponent for 4 or 6 damage whenever those tokens hit your side of the field. In at number 7 we have Torbran, Thane of Red Fell. Originally printed in the best set ever, 2019's Throne of Eldraine, Torbran says if a red source you control will deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. These decks go all out burn. We're casting all of those red spells that deal damage to either creatures, planeswalkers or players. And red has a bevy of different ways to do this. We have tapping cards, straight out instants and sorceries, or triggers from creatures, enchantments and more. And as we previously mentioned, all of those cards that deal double or triple damage are great. Deal that damage, then deal some more with Torbran. Torbran is so popular because of the variety of decks it can bring. With new ping-loving cards coming out in every set, the themes stay the same, but the change-up in cards can be plentiful. Narrowly missing out on the top half we have Magda, Brazen Outlaw. Originally printed in 2021's Kaldheim, she gives other dwarves +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token, and you can sack 5 treasures and search your library for an artifact or dragon card, putting that card straight onto the field. To start with, these Magda decks go dwarf heavy. With over 120 dwarfs in MTG, and nearly 50% being red, this is a theme that can easily fill that 100 card deck fast. Besides dwarfs, decks tend to go all out treasure, creating treasures every which way, throwing cards like Zorn that will double those treasures until we are absolutely swimming in them. We build up all of that treasure, then we can search through our library for all of those big bad dragons. Once again, red and dragon go hand in hand, with over 40% of the 340 plus dragons in MTG being red, meaning big treasure equals big dragons equals big win. Next on up we have Rianna, Fire Dancer. Part of the 2021 Commander Precon set, she says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. To start with, and similar to Magda, these decks mainly love that treasure. This time though, being creatures that love treasure. At combat, Rianna is making copies of a creature you control, so if you're copying those token-loving creatures, we're potentially getting many copies of them. And the instants and sorceries we're casting will be those cheap red spells, which can be twice as effective as we're then removing creatures, drawing ourselves cards, or giving our creatures effects such as trample or haste. And if you're not fancying copies of treasure makers, copies of creatures to give you extra turns, steal creatures and everything else means this is yet another deck that can give plenty of variety. Just missing out on the bronze medal spot, we have Solfem, Mayhem Dominus. Printed in this year's Phyrexia All Will Be One set, it says if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals double damage to that player or permanent instead. And you can pay and discard to put an indestructible counter on Solfem. We won't spend too long on this Phyrexian horror, as that Burning Brew style is one we've already talked about and is very common within Red. But if we did want to go for an untalked about theme, you could go Dragon's Approach. Pack in 30 to 40 of that famed sorcery, sack them and once again fetch out a big bad dragon and Dracarys your way to victory. This is one strong commander, and for the mana value, you could say it's Torbran on steroids. For the third best commander we have Neheb the Eternal. Originally printed in 2017's Hour of Devastation, Neheb has Afflict 3, and at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. As is the theme with red, we're doing as much as we can to deal damage as fast and quick as we can, so once we get to that post-combat phase, we can add in all of that red mana. Then once we have all of that post-combat mana, we need to spend it in that phase or it disappears, so here's where we throw in big creatures, massive enchantments, and spells that can create us even more value and help us start to run away with the game. As well as big spells, using that mana can also go towards big X spells. We've already dealt our opponent lots of damage pre-combat, so let's use that extra mana to deal them even more damage and get the game done even quicker. Runner-up and the second best commander, we have Zada, Hedron Grinder. Originally printed in 2015's Battle for Zendikar, this Goblin ally says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets only Zada, copy that spell for each other creature you control that the spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. To start with, we're creating a big wide army of tokens. We want as many tokens as possible on the board before Zada comes out. Once Zada hits the field, we're throwing in all of those cheap spells to target Zada. Once they hit Zada, they're hitting each other creature we have on the field. This can be so key in boosting our creatures, giving them things such as trample, or even just drawing us a ridiculous amount of cards. And thanks to new sets like Wilds of Eldraine, we have even more Zada deck fodder. This is a commander I've faced myself many times, and one that gets out of control fast. Winner and the best mono red commander is Goblin Mob Boss. Originally printed in Magic 2013, you can tap Krenko to put X/1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the field, where X is the number of goblins you control. Although many decks love goblins, this is the one true all-out goblin deck. With over 450 goblins printed in MTG's history and a whopping 80% being in red, we have so many options here. Add that in with over 70 goblin creature token creating cards, then this is a deck that can already have many goblins by the time you first tap Krenko. The synergy in goblins is strong too. We have cards to make them cheaper to cast, to give them +1/+1, or even give them the good old mountain walk. One of the most popular cards in Magic, as well as one of the most heavily reprinted commanders over the past 10 years, this is one that not only won the voting by a landslide, but one that rightfully owns its place as the best mono red commander in MTG. There we have it, that is the top 10 red list. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for all things MTG. Check out our link tree for all of our social media and affiliate links. For now though, I'm all tapped out, so I'll see you in the next video.